I never thought something as ordinary as opening my mailbox could unravel the darkest secret in our neighborhood. But the day I unfolded that first letter, my entire world shifted and the shadows hiding inside our HOA came alive. Crescent Hollow was the kind of suburban neighborhood realtors bragged about: trimmed hedges, cookie-cutter houses in muted tones, and a homeowners association that policed everything from lawn height to the color of your shutters. People move there for safety and order. But order has a way of hiding chaos and safety. Well, it can be an illusion on a cool September morning. Daniel Lawson, retired firefighter, broad-shouldered with a weathered face that told stories of smoke and flames, walked down his driveway with a cup of black coffee in hand. He liked routine. The same stretch, same neighbors waving as they backed out of their garages, the same metallic creak of the mailbox, except that morning something was different. Inside his box, tucked between junk flyers and a utility bill, was a plain white envelope. No stamp, no return address. Just his name in shaky black ink. He frowned, glancing around the street. Nobody lingered. Kids were climbing onto the school bus at the corner. A dog barked 2 houses down, normal, but when Daniel tore it open, the air felt heavier. The note inside read, "You don't belong here. You'll regret staying." No signature at first. He chuckled to himself. Maybe some kid's idea of a prank. He'd seen worse. But the handwriting gnawed at him, deliberate, almost careful, as if whoever wrote it wanted him to take it seriously. Later, that afternoon, Daniel brought the letter to the monthly HOA meeting in the community hall. Rows of folding chairs, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, and a long table where the board sat like self-appointed royalty. At the center was Karen, the HOA president. Early 60s, sharp bob haircut, pearl necklace. Her voice was as clipped as her rose bushes. Daniel waited until the miscellaneous concerns section before raising his hand. "Got something strange today," he said, holding up the note. "Anyone else get one of these?" Murmurs rippled through the room as neighbors leaned in to see. A few shook their heads. Karen took the letter, adjusted her glasses, and read aloud with a faint smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You don't belong here. You'll regret staying." She placed it back on the table. "Daniel, this is hardly cause for alarm. Probably kids messing around." Daniel narrowed his eyes. "There's no stamp." "Which means somebody in this neighborhood delivered it?" Margaret waved a dismissive hand. "If we panic over every little thing, we'll never get anything done. Unless others start receiving notes, let's move on." The meeting continued, but Daniel noticed the sideways glances. People whispered. Some looked unsettled. Others rolled their eyes. Afterward, as chairs scraped and neighbors filed out, a young woman approached Daniel. Sophie Kim, mid-30s, single. Mom worked long hours as a nurse. She lowered her voice. "I got one too," she admitted, pulling a crumpled letter from her purse. Same shaky handwriting. Same ominous message. Daniel's gut tightened. "When? 2 days ago?" "I thought it was, nothing. But now—" She trailed off, biting her lip. Fear flickered in her eyes. Daniel glanced around the emptying hall. Margaret was laughing softly with another board member, as if the letters had already been forgotten. But Daniel knew better. This wasn't a prank. This was deliberate, and something told him they were only just beginning. That night, as Daniel slid Sophie's letter next to his on the kitchen counter, he noticed something chilling. Both letters, when aligned, formed a faint imprint of another word pressed too hard into the paper. ***, watching Dot the following morning. Daniel walked his usual route with his golden retriever, Max. The air was crisp. Dew clung to the grass, and sprinklers ticked rhythmically down the street. But his thoughts kept circling the letters, the word watching. It wasn't random. Someone wanted them to know they weren't safe. When Daniel returned, his neighbor Tom Reynolds was already outside, watering his roses. Tom was in his late 40s, always in pressed khakis, the kind of man who trimmed his hedges twice a week. He eyed Daniel with a tight smile. "Morning. Hear about your little prank?" Tom asked, voice heavy with sarcasm. Daniel frowned. "Prank?" Tom nodded toward Karen's house down the block. She told me at the meeting you brought some nonsense letter. You know how people talk? Word spreads fast. Daniel felt heat rise in his chest. Doesn't feel like nonsense when more than one neighbor got the same message, Tom shrugged. Maybe you're stirring up drama. Folks don't like outsiders making trouble, Daniel's jaw clenched. Outsiders. He'd lived here barely a year, and it was clear some still saw him as a newcomer before Daniel could respond. Tom's little terrier barked sharply, pulling against its leash. Tom muttered something, yanked the dog back, and went inside. That night, Sophie called. Her voice trembled through the line. "Daniel, it's Max. He's gone." Daniel bolted upright in bed. "What do you mean gone?" Sophie stifled a sob. "He was in the yard. I let him out after dinner like always. When I went to call him in, the gate was open. He never leaves the yard, Daniel. He never does." Daniel pulled on his boots and drove straight over. Sophie's house sat at the corner of the cul-de-sac, porch light flickering as if even the electricity felt uneasy. She met him at the door, clutching her son's stuffed animal in one hand. Inside, her 10-year-old Ethan sat on the couch hugging his knees. His eyes were red. Daniel crouched down beside him. "Hey, buddy, we'll find Max, okay? Dogs are smart. He'll come back." But even as he said it, Daniel's gut twisted. This wasn't a runaway. The gate had been latched. Someone opened it. He and Sophie spent hours combing the streets with flashlights, calling Max's name. Neighbors peeked through blinds, but didn't come out to help. Eventually, at nearly 2 a.m., Sophie collapsed on the curb, tears streaking. Her face, "What if it's connected?" she whispered. "The letters, then this?" Daniel's jaw set. "It's not a coincidence." The next day, flyers went up. Sophie stapled them to every lamppost. Ethan handed them out at school. But whispers spread faster than paper. Some neighbors murmured about coyotes. Others said Sophie left the gate open herself at the HOA meeting that evening. Sophie stood before the board, voice trembling. "Someone took my dog. This isn't random. It started with the letters. Now Max is gone?" The board exchanged looks. Karen leaned forward, her pearl necklace catching the fluorescent light. "Sophie, I'm sorry about your loss. But we can't assume criminal intent without evidence. Pets do wander. Perhaps we should all be more diligent with our fences." Sophie's face crumpled. "You think I left the gate open? You think I made this up?" Karen's tone was syrupy, but sharp. "No one is accusing you. But causing panic doesn't help the community." Daniel slammed his fist on the table. "This isn't panic, it's a pattern. First the letters, now this. How many of us need to be threatened before you take it seriously?" The room went silent. Neighbors stared, some sympathetic, others wary. Karen simply folded her hands. "Unless you have proof, Daniel, it's speculation. Let's not waste any more of the board's time." Her gavel tapped, and just like that, the issue was dismissed. But as the meeting adjourned, Daniel noticed something unsettling. At the back of the hall, a man lingered. Tall, broad shoulders, baseball cap pulled low. He hadn't spoken, hadn't raised a concern, just sat in the last row, watching. When Daniel turned to get a better look, the man was gone. That night, as Daniel returned home, exhaustion pressing on his bones, he saw a shadow at the end of his driveway. A small box sat on the pavement, no markings. Heart pounding, he crouched and lifted the lid. Inside was Max's collar mud-streaked, the tag scratched as if clawed at, and beneath it, another note: "We warned you. Next time, it won't be the dog." Daniel froze, the words burning in his hands. This wasn't just intimidation anymore. It was a promise. It wasn't just Sophie's loss anymore. By the end of that week, fear spread faster than any neighborhood rumor. Crescent Hollow was no longer a quiet suburb. It was a pressure cooker waiting to blow. The morning after Max's collar appeared, Daniel barely slept. He patrolled the block with coffee in hand, scanning every car that drove too slowly. Every porch light that flickered by afternoon. He wasn't the only one on edge. Neighbors whispered at mailboxes, kids were pulled indoors earlier than usual, and even Tom Reynolds trimmed his hedges with an anxious glance over his shoulder. That evening, another letter appeared. Not in Daniel's box this time, but in Tom's. This one was longer. written in neat block letters. You think you're safe behind your perfect roses? You're not. We see what you hide. We know who you are. Tom stormed down the street, letter clutched in his hand, face red. This is harassment. Daniel, you started this mess. You've dragged us all into it. Daniel snapped back. I didn't write these, Tom. Why would I? Because you want attention. You want to play detective, stir everyone up. You're the outsider easy too. Point fingers at. Their shouting drew a small crowd. Karen emerged, her voice sharp. Enough! This paranoia is poisoning Crescent Hollow. Whoever is responsible will be dealt with. Until then, I suggest we all stop fueling hysteria. But Daniel saw something flicker in her eyes. Not dismissal this time, but unease. That night, Daniel returned home to find his porch light smashed. Glass glittered on the ground like broken ice, and on the doorframe, carved deep into the wood, was a single word, soon. By now, the letters weren't random pranks. They were methodical, planned, and whoever wrote them knew exactly how to break the neighborhood from the inside out. Daniel borrowed Sophie's security camera. Together, they set it up to watch his porch. If someone came back, they'd catch them. 2 nights later, the footage delivered something chilling. At 3:12 a.m., a figure appeared at the edge of the frame, tall, hood pulled low. They lingered at the fence, not moving, not speaking, just watching. Then, without approaching further, the figure walked away. Daniel replayed it over and over. The face was never visible, but the gait was deliberate, steady, almost military. He took the footage to Karen. She shook her head. It could be anyone, a teenager, a passerby. Karen, they left Max's collar. They carved into my door. How much more proof do you need? Her expression tightened. Without clear identification, the HOA can't escalate. I'll file a note for the record, that's all. Daniel leaned forward. What aren't you telling me? Her lips pressed into a thin line. I suggest you let this go, Mr. Harlan, for your own sake. Meanwhile, Sophie grew more paranoid. She swore someone followed her car home from the grocery store. She heard footsteps outside her window at night. Then came the package, left on her doorstep, wrapped in brown paper, no return address. Inside was a photo. A candid shot of Sophie and Ethan playing in the yard taken from across the street. On the back, written in thick marker, we choose the next move, not you. Sophie collapsed against Daniel, sobbing. Ethan hid upstairs, terrified. Daniel swore, this ends now. When fear becomes unbearable, suspicion takes its place. And in Crescent Hollow, every neighbor was now an enemy. The HOA called an emergency meeting. Dozens packed the hall. Some demanded more security cameras. Others accused the victims themselves of fabricating the drama. Maybe Daniel carved his own door, one man muttered. Ever think about that? Or Sophie staged the photo for attention. The tension was electric, like dry wood ready for a spark. Daniel stood. You've, all seen the pattern letters, threats, stalking. Whoever's doing this isn't just scaring us. They're controlling us, and you're letting it happen. Tom cut in. Or maybe it's you. This all started when you moved here. The crowd erupted. Voices clashed, accusations flew. Karen pounded her gavel, but no one listened. Then sudden silence. A loud bang echoed through the hall. Someone had slammed the doors shut from the outside. When they opened again, a box sat in the entryway. Inside, shredded pieces of Daniel's missing porch light, and another note. The game continues. One of you will fall. Gasps filled the room. Sophie clutched Ethan's hand. Neighbors looked around with wide eyes, suddenly doubting everyone in the room. Every mystery has cracks. And sometimes the truth hides not in shadows, but in plain sight. Daniel dug deeper. He cross-checked the timing of every letter and incident. Who was home? Who WSN single quotes dot patterns emerged. The letters always appeared when Karen had urgent HO business. The figure in the camera walked with a limp just like Tom, who injured his knee years ago. But Daniel couldn't prove it until Ethan noticed something. Mom, the photo of us. Look, he pointed to the background. Reflected faintly in a window across the street was part of a face. Half hidden but recognizable. Daniel's breath caught. It was Sia Arien. The HOA president. He confronted her at her house. Her mask of composure cracked for the first time. "You don't understand," she hissed. "This community was falling apart. People ignoring rules, chaos creeping in. Fear brings unity, control. I had to remind them who holds this neighborhood together." Daniel's stomach twisted. "You terrorized your own neighbors for power?" Karen's eyes glimmered coldly. "Order requires sacrifice." Before Daniel could respond, headlights flashed outside. A police car. Sophie had called them. Karen's calm cracked into rage. "You'll regret this, Daniel." "They all will." You'd think the nightmare would end once the villain was unmasked. But Crescent Hollow had learned monsters don't just disappear when the lights turn on. Karen was taken away in handcuffs. The neighborhood buzzed for weeks. Some celebrated her downfall. Others whispered Daniel had framed her. Sophie tried to move on, though Ethan still jumped at every creak outside. Daniel replaced his doorframe, but the carved words soon lingered in his mind like a scar. One evening, as he sat on his porch, Sophie joined him. "Do you think it's really over?" she asked. Daniel exhaled. "She's gone? But someone like Karen?" "She planted seeds. Fear doesn't vanish overnight." Sophie nodded, staring at the darkened street. "I just want normal again." For the first time in weeks, Crescent Hollow seemed calm. No letters. No smashed lights. No shadows at 3 a.m. until Daniel checked his mailbox the next morning. Inside was a single envelope. Different handwriting this time, it read. Karen wasn't the only one watching. Daniel's grip tightened. His heart thudded in his chest. For weeks, he thought the nightmare ended with her arrest. For weeks, he convinced Sophie, and even himself, that Crescent Hollow was safe again. But this was worse. Because if Karen hadn't acted alone. He turned slowly, eyes scanning the street. Mr. Reynolds watered his hedges with robotic focus. A jogger passed by, earbuds in. A child rode her bike in circles, humming softly. Everyone looked normal. Everyone looked innocent, but now Daniel knew better. Somewhere, behind one of those painted doors and trimmed lawns, someone else was pulling strings. Someone else had been there the entire time. Hidden in plain sight, he slid the letter back into its envelope. Jaw clenched. The neighborhood was quiet, too quiet. Daniel whispered to himself, almost a vow. "Whoever you are, I'll find you." Crescent Hollow thought the nightmare was over. But now we know the truth. It's only beginning. If you want to uncover more insane HOA secrets, betrayals, and shocking downfalls, make sure you subscribe right now, because the next story is darker than anything you've heard before.